Hey everybody, this is my one remaining red clawed crab. I shot an around the world video yesterday, around the world update video, and when we were looking at this tank I mentioned how I hadn't seen the crab in there for a while. I knew there was still one left, but it had been quite a while since I had seen it. And I wasn't sure if it was still in there or not. I assumed it was because I hadn't seen it. I hadn't smelled it. There was no, indication that I had a dead crab anywhere. And this morning, as I was walking down the basement, I noticed what appeared to be a giant tarantula in the hallway, on the way down into the washing machine area. So, of course, I knew immediately what it was. It was this red-clawed crab. He had gotten out of the tank and was making his way down the hallway. So I have no idea how long it was out. You can see its little legs sticking out there again. The tank is filthy. I really need to get in here and do some maintenance on this tank. That was actually on my agenda today. So I definitely still have a crab in there, and this tank is still not suited for properly housing a crab. It can obviously still get out. It's not easy for it to get out. The only way I could really do it is by climbing up the filter head over here and climbing out around the filter. I suppose if it swam to the surface, it might be able to get a hold of the moss that's hanging down over there. And then on this side of the tank, there's nothing really that close to the lip of the tank for it to get to, except for this plant. So possibly with this plant sitting there leaning up against, I didn't think there'd be any way for the crab to climb up that plant, but possibly it did. So maybe we'll just take that plant off of there. And again, this is still not really suited for a red-clawed crab. They really need land to be on. It's not so much that they can have access to the surface and simply get out of the water. It's not like they need to just take a break from being in the water for a while and they want to get out and sun themselves on a rock and then go back in the water. They actually need land. They burrow and they dig and they root around looking for food in the mud and the sand and everything. So I really do need to either get rid of that crab, find a good home, or revamp this tank. So I'm leaning towards revamping this tank. I need to get in here and do some work anyway. This tank up here, I had to remove the centerpiece that had powdery mildew growing all over it, and I removed the big hostas that were behind this whole setup. So I now have some empty space back here. We can even pull that out and give me a little more room, although I don't want to limit myself too much between my native tank and here, and that's why this was sort of pushed under here a little bit in the first place. All I needed was a place to set a couple of planters. But this tank, this 20 long, can move. It doesn't, there's nothing that says it has to stay where it is. So we can maybe turn this tank this way and have it lengthwise, and then do something different with this tank down here. I do have another 20 long in the other room, and that's where my mind has been going this morning, is thinking about not necessarily getting rid of this tank, but possibly adding a tank and incorporating a third tank into this whole garden area over here, and we could put the 20 long much more suited for the red-clawed crab. Very little water, maybe 2 inches of water at one end, and then have a lot of sand in it, and who knows, maybe I can get 1 or 2 more crabs. I didn't really want to buy any more crabs because I'm trying to get rid of the crabs. I bought them because I thought they were interesting. I've kept them for a while. It's not like it's an animal that I want to just always have red-clawed crabs. I'll always have angelfish. You'll always see me with angelfish. You'll probably always see me with some sort of pufferfish or something like that. I'm not always going to have red-clawed crabs. So buying more and sort of starting over, because they live several years, that's not really what I intended on doing. But at the same time, if I'm going to set a tank up, just, really finally do it right and do it just for the red-clawed crabs, why not put more than just the one in there, unless I can figure out something else to put in there Before anybody says mud skippers, I've already thought about mud skippers. They get really big. They need a fairly large tank by the time they're older, and they prefer actual mud instead of sand, and it's best to keep them in tidal conditions and so on and so forth. Mud skippers were actually one of the very first fish I looked into when I started thinking about brackish conditions and sort of a semi-aquatic, muddy sort of tidal flats and that sort of thing, and a mud skipper is, perfectly suited for that. But I'm just not ever going to set a tank up like that that's, ideally suited for a mud skipper. And if I do set this tank up the way I'm talking about doing it, to accommodate this red clawed crab down here, then it's not going to be suitable for a mud skipper. So, guppies, maybe some very small live bears like the guppies or endlers, because I'm not going to have a lot of water in the tank. So anything that's in there is going to have to be either very small brackish water fish like a guppy, or it's going to have to be a semi-aquatic animal that can also deal with brackish water. And other than maybe some snails or something, I'm not really sure what other animal I could put in there with the red clawed crab. So if you got any suggestions, let me know. Aside from the aforementioned mud skipper, we already know we're not going to do that. So anyway, I'm going to get on with tinkering now that I'm in here. I got a little bit of time on my hands, so I'm at least going to get some water changes done and that sort of thing. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. So don't forget, this one here is what I call my garden tank. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.